Whispers of turmoil are once again echoing through the gilded halls of Buckingham Palace. For years, the relationship between King Charles III and Queen Camilla has been presented as the triumph of enduring love, a union that withstood scandal, public scrutiny, and the shadow of Diana, Princess of Wales. Yet, behind the polished facade of royal duty and carefully curated appearances, troubling signs have begun to emerge. Reports suggest that the seemingly unshakable bond between Charles and Camilla is showing deep fractures. Recently, speculation reached fever pitch when insiders revealed that the king, exhausted by mounting pressures and shaken by private betrayal, allegedly declared his intention to divorce Camilla. The claim, as shocking as it is unprecedented, has sent shockwaves through Britain and beyond. Could it truly be that after decades of struggle to legitimize their relationship, the royal couple now stands on the brink of collapse? For Camilla, whose path to the throne was marked by controversy and resilience, such rumors cut deep. For Charles, who has always portrayed her as his confidant and one true love, even the suggestion of betrayal strikes at the heart of his reign. The monarchy, already navigating turbulent waters with the health concerns of Princess Catherine and the estrangement of Prince Harry, now faces yet another storm that could reshape its very foundation. Is this the unraveling of the royal marriage that once defied all odds? Or is it merely another chapter in the never-ending saga of intrigue surrounding the House of Windsor? Join us as we uncover the truth, peel back the layers of secrecy, and examine what really lies behind King Charles's alleged declaration of divorce from Queen Camilla. The news about the fallout between Camilla and Charles did not come from a media outlet, as many expected. Instead, it emerged quietly from within the palace walls. According to close sources within Buckingham Palace, the tension between the king and queen has reached a level no one thought possible. But before examining the main issue at hand, it's important to look back at how it all started, which takes us straight to the complicated triangle between Charles, Diana, and Camilla. Stay with us until the end of this video, because what we're about to uncover will give you the full story. In July 1981, the world watched the wedding of Prince Charles, heir to the throne, and Lady Diana Spencer. It was broadcast to millions across the globe and described as a fairy tale come to life. Diana, just 20 years old, looked like the perfect princess, while Charles, at 32, was finally settling into the role expected of him. But behind the smiles and glamour, problems already existed. Even before his marriage, Charles had been deeply attached to Camilla Parker Bowles. Their friendship dated back to the early 1970s. Though Camilla married Andrew Parker Bowles in 1973, her bond with Charles never truly ended. It reached a point where Princess Diana openly admitted that her marriage was never truly between just two people. From the start, she felt the weight of another presence, knowing deep down that her husband's heart was never entirely hers. By the mid-1980s, the cracks in Charles and Diana's marriage were clear. Diana felt isolated, trapped by palace life, and often overshadowed by her husband's closeness to Camilla. Charles, meanwhile, grew more distant, unhappy with the public role he had to play. Behind closed doors, arguments and unhappiness became normal. In public, the couple maintained appearances, attending royal duties side by side. But friends and insiders knew the truth. The public display of affection was not the fairy tale people believed. Then, a shocker came in 1993 with the release of the infamous Camilla Gate tapes. These were recordings of a private conversation between Charles and Camilla from 1989. The call was filled with intimate remarks never meant for the public. When the transcripts were published in newspapers, the scandal exploded. The British public, already suspicious of Charles, turned heavily against him. Diana, on the other hand, gained sympathy. She was now seen not just as a wronged wife, but as a woman who had endured humiliation with grace. 2 years later, Diana added fuel to the fire with her 1990 BBC Panorama interview. Speaking with honesty rarely seen from a royal, she admitted her marriage had collapsed because of Charles's relationship with Camilla. Her words shocked the world and further damaged the monarchy's image. Then came December 1992, when Prime Minister John Major announced to Parliament that Charles and Diana had separated. By 1986, the divorce was finalized. The end of their marriage was painful, public, and filled with bitterness. Even though separated from the royal family, Diana shone in her own right. Princess Diana threw herself into charity work, tackling issues others avoided, like HIV, some AIDS awareness, and the campaign against landmines. She also devoted herself to raising Prince William and Prince Harry with as much normality as possible despite the constant media glare. But tragedy struck in August 1997. Diana died in a car crash in Paris at just 36. The news sent shockwaves across the world. Crowds filled the streets of London, mourning a woman who had captured hearts everywhere. Her funeral was watched globally, and her memory became fixed as the people's princess. After Diana's death, Charles faced the grave task of rebuilding his image. For many a Cineon, Camilla was the villain of the story, blamed for destroying Diana's marriage and happiness. Public anger toward her was fierce, and she stayed out of the spotlight for years. But time began to soften views. Charles continued his royal duties, gradually reducing Camilla into his public life. She took on charity work and remained discreet, never trying to outshine Diana's memory. Slowly, opinion began to change. Then, against all odds, it happened. In 2005, Charles and Camilla married in a modest civil ceremony, followed by a blessing at St. George's Chapel in Windsor. To show how much disapproval Charles faced for his marriage to Camilla, it's notable that Queen Elizabeth II did not attend the civil wedding, though after much pressure from Charles, she showed her support. Camilla chose the title Duchess of Cornwall, avoiding Princess of Wales, which remained closely linked to Diana. The marriage marked a turning point. For the first time, Charles and Camilla could live openly as a couple, though the memory of Diana never truly left public conversation. But that was not all. In September 2022, Queen Elizabeth II passed away at the age of 96. After 70 years on the throne, her reign ended, and Charles finally became King Charles III. At his side stood Camilla, now Queen Consort. It was the moment Charles had prepared for his entire life, but it came with mixed emotions. Many still saw Diana as the rightful queen in spirit. Camilla, though more accepted than before, continued to face criticism in some quarters. Yet, officially, she was now queen, sharing the throne with her husband. Not long after his coronation, another challenge came. In February 2024, Buckingham Palace revealed that Charles had been diagnosed with cancer after a routine medical procedure. Though the type of cancer was not specified, the announcement confirmed he had begun treatment and would step back from some public duties. The news shocked the nation. Charles had waited decades to become king, only to face a serious illness and within 2 years of taking the throne. Questions about succession began to circulate, with many looking to Prince William as the future of the monarchy. During this time, Camilla did something that shocked everyone and made Charles feel betrayed. Want to know what really happened? Keep watching. Camilla's betrayal. It started on the morning of March 27, 2020. King Charles was rushed to the London clinic, the same hospital where he had earlier received treatment, after experiencing serious side effects from his ongoing cancer therapy. The scene was tense. Doctors moved quickly while the security teams sealed off the entrance. News spread fast, and within hours, senior members of the royal family were seen arriving at the hospital. Prince William was there with Catherine, Princess of Wales. Princess Anne, known for her no-nonsense attitude, also rushed in. Prince Edward and his wife Sophie were not far behind. The entire family seemed to gather in one place, anxious about the king's condition. But then, palace insiders noticed something unusual. Queen Camilla was nowhere to be seen. As the king's wife, many expected her to be the first by his side. Yet, as the morning hours passed, her absence became impossible to ignore. William, visibly unsettled, finally picked up his phone. He scrolled through his contacts and dialed Camilla's number. The phone rang several times before she finally answered. William quickly pressed the speaker button so everyone in the room could hear. His voice was tense as he asked, "Why are you not here, Ma?" On the other end, Camilla's reply was cold and brief. "I was busy," she said flatly. "I couldn't make it, but I'll be there in the evening." The reply left the room in silence. For a moment, no one could believe what they had heard. Anne, never one to hold back her feelings, was the first to react. "Busy? How can she be busy when her husband is lying in a hospital bed?" she demanded. Her voice was sharp, showing her upset. William, still holding the phone, shook his head in disbelief. Catherine leaned closer and whispered, "This doesn't feel right at all." Edward, usually the quietest among them, finally spoke up. "It's not about schedules or duties today. This is family. The king needs her here." The conversation grew tense as the royals exchanged worried glances. To them, Camilla's absence felt more than unusual. It felt disrespectful. Anne pressed further. "There's no reason on earth for her not to be here unless she doesn't care." But before the discussion could continue, the sound of the king's weak but firm voice broke through the tension. From his hospital bed, Charles spoke with surprising clarity. "I trust her," he said. "If she is busy, then it must be something very important. Leave it at that." His words silenced the room. No one dared to challenge him directly, though unease lingered among them. William exchanged a glance with Catherine, and Anne folded her arms, clearly unconvinced. The loyalty Charles showed to Camilla, even in his fragile state, only deepened the mystery of why she was absent. Later that evening, Camilla finally arrived at the hospital. All eyes turned as she stepped through the main entrance. She was dressed elegantly, wearing a long, dark coat with a silk scarf tied neatly around her neck. Her expression was unreadable, and the moment she walked into the building, word spread quickly among staff and family members alike. When Camilla finally stepped into the hospital room, eyes turned toward her. The tension was heavy, and it was Princess Anne who spoke first. Her tone was calm but sharp. "Why were you not here this morning?" she asked quietly. Camilla paused at the doorway, standing still for a few seconds before giving her answer. "One of my grandchildren needed me," she said, explaining that she had been helping Lola prepare for an essay, a reason that felt almost irrelevant given the situation. The moment those words left her mouth, everyone in the room exchanged stunned glances. No one spoke. The silence was thick, filled with disbelief. For nearly 5 minutes, Camilla remained standing, unmoved by the atmosphere around her. At last, she walked slowly to Charles's bedside. Leaning down slightly, she tapped his head with her hand in a soft gesture and asked, "How are you feeling?" "I'm a bit better," Charles replied, his voice faint but steady. The two spoke quietly for a few minutes, their words too soft for others to fully catch. Then, as the family gathered closer, it became clear they would soon have to shift to the main issue at hand, the matter of Charles's official engagements. The following day was packed with duties, and with the king still weak from treatment, someone would need to step in. William was the first to break the silence. "What are we going to do about tomorrow?" he asked, his voice low but firm. Anne quickly nodded. "Yes, tomorrow there are 3 engagements Charles is supposed to attend. We can't simply leave them hanging, so how do we handle it?" Charles leaned back slightly on his pillows, his face pale but thoughtful. He turned his gaze toward Camilla, who sat across the room, her hands folded neatly in her lap. After a pause, he spoke. "That won't be a problem," he said. "We have the Queen Consort here. She will represent me at the first one, the ambassador's reception at Buckingham Palace. William will go for the second, and Anne, you can handle the third." Anne and William exchanged quick glances, then nodded. "That's a good idea," Anne agreed. "It shows unity. We can divide and cover everything without issue." But before the plan could settle, Camilla raised her head. Her expression was calm, almost detached, as she spoke words that stunned the room. Keep watching for more. I don't think that will be possible, but she said evenly. I'm busy. In fact, I will be leaving soon. Charles's eyes widened. What? His voice cracked with disbelief. What do you mean busy? What could possibly be more important than your role as queen consort, especially when I am unwell? Camilla crossed one leg over the other, her tone unwavering. I promised to prepare my granddaughter Lola for her essay. That is bigger than anything at this point. Anne shot forward in her chair, her frustration spilling over. Bigger than a sick king's order? She sneered. Do you even hear yourself? Camilla's gaze did not waver. I am not flouting any order. I am simply doing what I believe is right. Family comes first. She glanced at her watch, then added with a faint smile, Oops, I have to be on my way. And just like that, she stood, adjusted her coat, and left the hospital room without so much as asking for permission. The heavy door closed behind her, and the same silence that had filled the room earlier returned. Only thicker, heavier. Everyone's eyes eventually turned back to Charles, whose face showed more hurt than anger. His trust had been shaken, but he tried to steady himself for the sake of dignity. What do we do now? He asked softly. Edward, who had been quiet until then, spoke up. I can go. It won't be a problem. But Charles shook his head. No, he said firmly. The queen consort ought to be present at one event, at least to show a united front. That is the expectation. If she will not appear, then we cannot simply replace her as though it doesn't matter. The room fell quiet again, every word sinking in. For Charles, duty was sacred, and Camilla's absence now meant more than just a missed appointment. It was a blow to the very image of the monarchy. With no other choice, Charles gave the final word. We will have to postpone. And so the following morning, the royal household released a statement. It read that the king's engagements had been postponed due to his health and that he would resume duties as soon as possible. The public, unaware of what had really taken place inside that hospital room, reacted with sadness and sympathy. Messages of support poured in from across the world. But behind palace walls, the truth was far more painful. The very person Charles had trusted most, the woman who was supposed to stand by him in sickness and in health, was the real reason those engagements had been canceled. And that truth weighed heavily on everyone present. Yet, that was just the beginning of something more shocking. Stay with us. Diana's missing jewelry. After several days at the London clinic, King Charles was finally discharged. He returned to Buckingham Palace looking frail but determined to resume his duties. Outwardly, he tried to maintain an image of strength, smiling for the cameras as he was driven back to the palace gates. But behind the scenes, those closest to the royal household whispered a different story. They said the king had been deeply wounded, not by the illness alone, but by Camilla's cold absence during his most vulnerable hours. His silence towards her in the days that followed spoke volumes. He did not confront her directly, but insiders revealed that he was heartbroken, more shaken than many had ever seen him. Just as he was settling back into the palace and preparing to resume engagements at a slower pace, an even greater shock emerged. Reports began circulating inside royal circles that several pieces of jewelry had mysteriously gone missing from the collection. At first, staff assumed it was a mistake in record-keeping, the kind of clerical oversight that occasionally happened when items were transferred between vaults. But then the truth became clear. This was not a simple error. Among the missing pieces were jewels with immense historical and emotional value. Most notably, Princess Diana's iconic sapphire and diamond engagement ring, the very ring she wore during her 1981 engagement announcement to Charles, was gone. The same ring that had captured the hearts of millions, a symbol of what the world once believed was a fairy tale marriage, had vanished without explanation. Alongside Diana's ring were several heirlooms belonging to Queen Elizabeth II, including a pearl necklace she had worn during state occasions. These were not just ornaments. They were pieces of history, carrying the weight of both Diana's legacy and the late Queen's memory. When the news reached King Charles, he was visibly shaken. He had endured illness and betrayal. But this was different. This was not just about family. It was about the crown itself, Boehm. To lose Diana's sapphire ring was to lose a piece of the monarchy's heart. To misplace Elizabeth's pearls was to tarnish the dignity of a reign that had lasted 70 years. For Charles, it was unthinkable. Even though he was still recovering, he immediately summoned the master of the household, the keeper of the privy purse, and senior palace security officials. His voice, though weak, carried unmistakable authority. "I want answers," he demanded. "Every door, every record, every name checked and rechecked. These are not trinkets. These are the legacy of this house." For days, investigations ran through the palace halls. Staff were questioned, vaults were inspected, and logs were reviewed. The tension was suffocating, with whispers among courtiers about who could possibly be responsible. Then came the devastating report. Evidence and rumors pointed in one direction. The very person Charles trusted most, the woman he had defended countless times before, Queen Camilla. When the findings were placed before him, Charles reportedly closed his eyes and sat in silence for several long minutes. Witnesses described his expression as broken, his face drained of all color. It was as though he had aged years in that single moment. To think that Diana's sapphire ring, the same ring that William once gave to Catherine before it was quietly returned for safekeeping, was now tied to Camilla's name was almost unbearable. For Charles, the betrayal was deeper than words. It was not only Diana's legacy at stake, but also his late mother's, and with it, the very authority of the monarchy. That night, insiders say Charles made a decision no monarch before him had dared to take. So, keep watching because this is where it gets better. Charles's reaction to the betrayal. That decision was made in his private study, a large room filled with dark wood, old portraits, and the heavy silence that comes after days of pain. Charles sat behind his desk, his face still pale from treatment, but his eyes sharper than ever. For once, this was not about doctors or duties. It was about something deeper. His family, his marriage, and the very future of the monarchy. He had called for only two people. To Charles, they were not just trusted relatives, but the ones who represented both the present and the future of the crown. His sister, Princess Anne, and his eldest son, Prince William. When they entered the room, he gestured for them to sit. The weight of the moment was clear. There were no reporters here, no courtiers, no aides, just family. "I believe we all saw what happened at the hospital," Charles began, his voice low but firm. "I must confess that Camilla's actions at the hospital tore me apart. But at that time, I had to let it go. I told myself it was for love and also for the sake of keeping the monarchy together." He paused, his hands folded tightly in front of him. Then he looked at them again, his tone darkening. "However, with recent events concerning the missing jewelry, this is something I cannot ignore. And to make matters worse, Camilla's name is the prime suspect at this point." The room went completely still. Anne leaned back slightly, her sharp eyes fixed on her brother, while William straightened up in disbelief. He was the first to speak. "But father," William said quickly, his voice laced with shock. "She can't be involved in that. It has to be a mistake, a mix-up. Camilla wouldn't do such a thing." Charles nodded slowly. "Yes, that may be true. And God knows I want it to be untrue. But I called you both here to tell you this. If the rumors turn out to be true, I will divorce her. And not only that, I will strip her of every title she bears and everything she came into this royal house with. Stealing cannot be accepted. Not in my family, not in this institution." His words landed heavily. The study felt colder. Anne, who was rarely afraid to speak her mind, raised her brow. "Charles, don't you think that's too harsh? Divorce? stripping titles, removing her completely. Is that the only way? Charles turned to her, his face tightening with pain and disappointment. Harsh, he repeated. It cannot be harsh, Anne. Not after all I put at stake just to be with her. You should remember I even threatened the late queen to recognize her, to give her the title she wears today. And now, for such a person to leave me in my most vulnerable moment in life, when I was on a hospital bed fighting for strength, speaks volumes. And this stealing scandal crowns it all. He pressed his palm against the desk as if holding back anger. His voice wavered, not from weakness but from heartbreak. I gave her everything. Acceptance, dignity, a crown that many believed she never deserved. And now she is nowhere to be found when I need her most. And worse, her name is being whispered in connection with my mother's jewels, with Diana's ring, the very symbols of trust and legacy. That is beyond betrayal. That is treason to the spirit of this family. William looked down, his jaw tight. He wanted to defend Camilla, but the weight of his father's pain left him silent. Anne, on the other hand, leaned forward, her voice steady but gentler this time. Brother, if you are certain about this, then it will change everything. Divorce at your stage, and so publicly, will shake the crown itself. Are you prepared for that? Charles closed his eyes briefly, then opened them with resolve. The monarchy survived worse storms. It survived abdications, scandals, and deaths. It can survive this, too. What it cannot survive is a queen consort who steals or even is suspected of stealing from the very heart of this house. If we let this pass, then what do we stand for? Silence hung in the air again. The ticking of the old clock on the wall filled the room. William exhaled slowly, realizing that this was not just about jewelry. It was about trust, broken beyond repair. Charles' voice softened, but the firmness remained. I do not wish for this outcome, but if the investigation confirms it, then I must do what has never been done before. I will protect the monarchy, even if it means losing the woman I once fought the world to keep. Anne nodded quietly, finally understanding the depth of his resolve. William looked away, the burden of what was coming heavy on his shoulders. In that private study, history was shifting. The king had drawn his line, and if the rumors proved true, the crown would face a storm like no other. Because sometimes when trust is broken, mending a wounded heart is harder than facing any storm. Do you think King Charles should go ahead with the divorce if Camilla is found guilty? And what's your take on her actions at the hospital?